people who were evangelical always knew that evangelicals were never as monolithic or as monochrome as people outside the movement thought they were. Right. You know, anybody who is, you know, the infamous statement by the Washington Post editorial writer that evangelicals were poor, uneducated, and easily led. Actually, they're a little higher than the national income average. They're a little better educated than the national average. And they are about as easily led as trying to herd tomcats. The one thing all evangelicals believe in is the priesthood of the believer. They believe that they have the right to decide for themselves, and trust me, they do. I think that first of all, the equation of evangelicals with the religious right does a tremendous disservice to social conservative Catholics. Let's not forget that people who identified themselves as traditional Catholics in the 2004 election voted 72% for George W. Bush. And it was the reason that for the first time since Catholic immigration to this country in large numbers, that non-Latino Catholics gave a majority of their votes to George W. Bush. And it was not over economic issues. It was not over national security issues. It was over social conservative Catholics who were, you know, the only thing worse to them than a pro-choice candidate is a pro-choice Catholic candidate, which is sort of like rubbing salt in the wounds for them. And I understand that, because the only thing worse than a pro-choice candidate for me is a pro-choice candidate who's a Southern Baptist. It wounds you a little more when it's someone in your own faith tradition, as Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter and Al Gore are. They're all Southern Baptists.
No, Jimmy Carter's not pro-choice then.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's the worst of all possible alternatives.
You know, Jimmy Carter said to me this year, I do not believe in abortion. I don't think Jesus would have believed in abortion. And that he had started the WIC program, that he, when as president, he inherited that legacy of Roe versus Wade, that he understood his role as president as fulfilling the law of the land. But as a Christian, what he did is start the WIC program.
Well, as I said, Jimmy Carter's the worst of all possible alternatives. It's one thing to believe that it's all right to do abortions, and so you believe it should be legal under virtually all circumstances. It's something else to say, well, I personally believe that abortion's wrong, and I don't think that Jesus would approve them, but I believe so totally in separation of church and state that I don't believe the government ought to have any restrictions on abortion. You see, some of us, Jimmy Carter included, are used to that, because we grew up hearing people say, well, I'm personally opposed to racism, and I would never personally discriminate against somebody. But I don't think that we should have laws that keep other people from discriminating against people. And so for pro-life people, Jimmy Carter's position is more offensive than those who are pro-choice in their views. And I think that we're going to see how radical a shift there is in the electorate in this 2008 election. So far, it hasn't happened in the polls. Now, polls can change, and it's still a long way till Election Day, but in Time Magazine's edition, the one in which they had Rick Warren on the cover, a Southern Baptist minister, by the way, and a good friend of mine, I must confess that I'm genetically inclined to be an optimist. I'm a sort of a half glass full kind of guy. But even I, in my wildest dreams, would never have imagined that the only joint appearance of the two presidential candidates prior to the debates would be at a Baptist church with a fourth-generation Southern Baptist preacher asking all the questions. I mean, I'm not that optimistic, but that's what happened at the Saddleback Civil Forum. In that edition of Time, there was a Time magazine poll that showed that 70% of evangelicals were planning to vote, white evangelicals were planning to vote for McCain, and 19% were planning to vote for Obama, and the rest were undecided. Now that compares to, in the 2004 election, 78% voted for Bush and 22% voted for Kerry. Now only 15% of that 70% said that they were planning on doing so with enthusiasm. Now that was before the Saddleback Forum, and that was before he picked Sarah Palin as his running mate. I can tell you that my email and my phone messages have gone absolutely off the chart. My email has stacked up to about 300 so far since Friday morning from evangelicals and social conservative Catholic friends of mine who are just, I don't know any other word to say except ecstatic over the pick of Sarah Palin most of them women. And I must say that just as there's something going on in Barack Obama's campaign that as a white male I can't tap into, about the fact that there's something about an African American running for president that touches African Americans in ways that as a white male I just have to acknowledge. I can observe it, I can appreciate it, but I can't understand it. And the same thing's true with Sarah Palin being nominated as vice president. There's something going on with at least with conservative and independent members of the sisterhood that I just can't, as a white male, tap into. I can observe it, and I am observing it, and I am experiencing it, but I can't say that I can comprehend it. But it's there. I mean, I have 8 women who work in my office. Most of them, they're between 30 and 65. They are all Southern Baptists. They're all conservatives, but they were absolutely giddy. I mean, like this, and saying, I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to work after Sarah Palin was picked. So we'll see. We'll see if there's a radical shift. There is a generational shift. Younger evangelicals want an expansion of the agenda to include other things.
We're going to come back.
But they're not going to accept an exchange of agendas. They're not going to abandon their commitment to the pro-life cause.
All right.